Hello and welcome to Low Carb Conversations. I'm your host, Leah Williamson, and I'm with my co-host, Holly. Welcome, Holly.
Hello, hi, Leah.
We have a great guest today, Amanda Nighbert. She is a registered dietitian specializing in weight loss nutrition. She's a fitness enthusiast and a working mum of two. She's also a celebrated TEDx speaker with her talk on the number one reason why dieters fail, and is very active on Instagram. Actually, I've been following you on Instagram, and I do like. And so Amanda is a strong believer that dieting is temporary, something that you start and stop. Therefore, it is important to focus on lifestyle changes to truly see long-term weight loss success. We love that. Welcome to the podcast, Amanda.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
We're really excited as well. So dietitians, changing a little bit these days. Used to be very strict about their philosophy and the way of doing things. I'd love to find out your story and what made you kind of change this to this kind of different paradigm a little bit to what, a stereotypical dietitian would be following.
Yeah, I love that question because I worked actually in a hospital setting, a clinical setting for almost 20 years. And about, I'd say 8 years in, I started to be called the renegade dietitian because I was the dietitian telling everyone to do exactly the opposite of what like mainstream, traditional nutrition was saying. And it was really my own experience with a health issue. I was diagnosed with cholesterol of over 300 when I was just about 30 years old. When I realized that, the dogma that we had been teaching, low calorie, low fat, calories in versus calories out, exercise more, eat less, it's just not working. I mean, it didn't work for me. It didn't make me a healthy human, and it wasn't working for my clients. So it was really that experience where I kind of went down the rabbit hole, learned how the nutritional guidelines were actually set based on a lot of flawed science, and how those guidelines actually triggered more obesity and disease, and how to kind of make that shift to focus on maybe food quality, inflammation, insulin balance, cortisol balance, kind of looking at the big picture. So I think sometimes some of the most beneficial health and wellness practitioners are ones that have gone through some sort of health experience themselves. They can kind of relate to what you're dealing with.
That's so true. And your health issue that you had, the high cholesterol, was there some key takeaways that worked for you that were different to what you were usually led to believe?
Yeah. I had just given birth to my daughter about 8 months prior. I had lost all my baby weight. I was eating a low fat, low calorie diet, exercising. I was doing everything I thought that was required to be the healthiest me. Went to the doctor, got my blood work. My cholesterol was actually 330. And she kind of immediately wanted to put me on cholesterol lowering medication because she said it was genetic. My father had heart disease. And I said, you know what, give me 6 months and let me see if I can fix this on my own. I was only 30 years old. I didn't want to be on a prescription med for the rest of my life. So I left there thinking, well, because she gave me a sheet. She's like, here's how to lower your cholesterol. And I looked at it. I'm like, well, this is what I'm doing. So I left there, went out and did my own research. I actually came across a book called The Great Cholesterol Myth, and I read it. And what it taught me is that cholesterol is actually an inflammatory response. And if you could reduce inflammation in your body, you could actually improve your numbers. And the biggest thing that was happening in my own diet is while I was so focused on eating low calorie and low sugar, not low fat, I was actually eating really high carb and high sugar. And we know carbs and sugars are some of the most inflammatory foods out there. And so I completely changed my mindset. I started eating eggs and bacon for breakfast and using butter and, kind of more focused on reducing carbs and sugars, really more about finding a better balance in my diet. Versus, no fat and all the carbs. And, 6 months later, I came back and my cholesterol was below 200. And I remember her saying, wow, congratulations. What did you do? And I said, I did the exact opposite of what you told me to do.
Love it.
and again, it was really from that point forward that I was like, what's really going on here? And that's when I really dove into the research and learned in 1977, when the first nutritional guidelines were set, it was based on theory and assumption, calories in versus calories out. That's really why we villainize fat, is because for every gram of fat, it's 9 calories. But for every gram of carb and sugar, or carbs and proteins, it's only 4 calories. So eat a little fat, eat more carbs, protein, and that energy equation will work out a lot easier. But what happened is all the manufacturers took all the fat out of their food and they started adding carbs and sugars. So yes, we ate 25% less fat, over the course of the next 2 to 3 decades, but we ate 4 times the amount of carbs and sugars that we were eating. And that really backfired, with regards to our overall health and wellness. And now we know, fat's not the enemy. It took us about 3 decades to realize that. And so now we're all about carbs, which, again, excessive amounts of carbs and sugars are definitely going to negatively impact your health. But, I think that what we've lost in this whole conversation of nutrition is just the concept of balance.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we definitely agree as well. And yeah, cutting out vegetables because they're seen as carbohydrates is ridiculous, because there's so many good nutrients in these foods. So yeah, and then we need the fat on top because that's what makes food taste good. So
exactly. Yes. I'm actually running like a little just, community challenge on my Instagram. And it's really to help people tackle sugar cravings. And my challenge is, whenever you have a sugar craving, eat fruit, eat a ton of it, eat as much as you want, because we're so scared of fruit. We're so scared of carrots because they're high in carbs. We're scared of fruit because they're high in sugar. But in reality, it's exactly what you said. The reason why people struggle with sugar cravings, it's not a macronutrient issue. It's a micronutrient issue. They're lacking in potassium and magnesium and vitamins and minerals. So I find when I do a challenge like this, myself included, I may eat 4 or 5 pieces of fruit on day 1 and 2, but by day 3 and 4, 1 piece of fruit is all I need, so recognizing that it's really about micronutrients, whole food nutrition, vitamins and minerals that really help support your hunger levels and your cravings more so than, single macronutrients, can be really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. Well, then you started helping others, which we love. Like, you've learned from your own experience and now you're sharing that with others. And you have a program called Living Energized and Nourished, which is the Lean program. So would you like to tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah. So, I was in the clinical setting for 20 years and just decided right before I was about to turn 40 that I wanted to pivot into this online space. And what I kept experiencing, because I was actually a weight loss dietitian in the hospital setting, is that people were just coming to me confused. There was so much noise in the space of nutrition. One person says, eat keto and low fat, and one person says eat vegan and raw foods, and so really people were just like so overwhelmed that it paralyzed them to do absolutely nothing. And so my mission was really to simplify nutrition for health and wellness, show people that all foods fit, it's just the balance in which you fit them, teaching them, what's priorities, what is your priority when you're looking at macronutrients, when you're looking at food choices, if you pick these foods first over these foods, how's that going to impact your blood sugar regulation? And just, again, making it super simple. Teaching them the importance of breaking the all or nothing mindset, which is what my TED Talk was about. So that's been really exciting. I've been able to work with close to 50,000 clients over the last 5 years, and just really kind of break out of this whole dieter's mindset.
And if people want to know more about the program, they can go to your website. And is it set intakes that you do, or can they join at any time?
Yeah. So head over to my website, follow me on Instagram. You'll find information there. And I usually start a session about every 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I think what sets my program apart from other kind of health and wellness programs, it's a very high touch program. It provides daily support and accountability. You have access to me 24/7 through my free app. And, you know, I'm not going to let you fail. Okay. So like when you don't show up, I go find you. And then we figure out, why are you not showing up and how can we address that moving forward? Because again, it just comes into the all or nothing mindset. You know, people think they have to be perfect to be successful. And in reality, you just need to be consistently good.
Yeah, we love that. Holly and I love the progress over perfection philosophy. We're always on about that. So Holly has an article that we're going to talk about now, which is about fad dieting. So I'll hand it over to Holly.
Yeah, this is a perfect time to bring it up because it falls right into exactly what we're talking about, is why fad diets don't work. And this is actually an article from Healthline. And I like bringing up articles from sites like this because we know these are what people are really seeing. So basically this article is just saying, you know, pointing out how there's fad diets everywhere. You can't walk down a grocery store aisle or really even turn on your TV or scroll social media without being bombarded with some kind of advertisement or some kind of marketing that is pushing a way of eating or some kind of a diet. It's saying our consumers are just bombarded, which is contributing to what you said, Amanda, like this diet confusion, because there's all this noise everywhere. So I want to bring up some of the fad diets that are noted in this article. But first, I want to hear your thoughts, Amanda, on why do you think fad diets don't work? I think you already kind of touched on a couple things, but let's dive into your reasonings of why these diet mindsets don't work.
Well, when I think of fad diets, I think of quick fixes, you know, and guys, I'm here to tell you, quick fixes never work in the long run. I mean, one of my mottos is whatever you do to lose weight, you better be prepared to do to keep it off. Because, you know, if you decide to do a liquid diet where you drink, you know, 6 shakes a day for 30 days, yeah, you're going to drop 30 pounds. But in order to sustain that weight loss, you're going to have to continue to drink shakes every day, you know? And I think that that's where fad diets seem so appealing, is because most of them are promoting very quick results. You know, in the long run, consumers have to realize that that just doesn't work.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I just wrote down what you said there. That's a good line of whatever you're doing to lose the weight, be prepared to just do that forever, because it really is about creating a lifestyle change. And we hear that a lot now, is lifestyle change, it's habit change, it's creating consistency within the lifestyle and within the habits. And just like you, when I hear fad diets, I think of things like drinking celery juice, or even like the Subway sandwich diet or the baby food diet. Like to me, a fad diet is something that's pretty obviously ridiculous. But this article actually like points out a couple things that I would actually argue maybe are not necessarily quite fad diets. So the first one, it says a detox diet. Okay, yes, I think a lot of the detoxy things are very gimmicky and they're not going to work forever. But like it said, we already have a detox system, and that's our liver and kidneys. It's like, okay, yes, that's true, but we're bombarded with so many things these days. So I do believe that our body needs a little bit of help sometimes in that department. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's absolutely tons of applications to do, you know, a 7-day detox, a 14-day detox. I think it's a matter of what's your exit strategy, you know? I mean, if you're going to detox and then go on vacation for 7 days, you know, if you're detoxing for vacation or you're detoxing for, you know, an event to fit in a dress, then you're kind of doing it for all the wrong reasons. So it's really, what's the intention? You know, a true detox should be about resetting the body, you know, resetting your hunger, resetting your cravings, resetting your gut health. There's so much benefit in all of that. But to do that and then just to, you know, go back to my favorite line, eating like an asshole, well, then that's just silly.
Yeah. And you know what, that made me think of, we talk a lot about like Whole30 on here because like that would probably be considered a fad diet. But we believe it's one of those things that's a really good way for people to learn about their bodies and how they respond to food and to get a feel for what their bodies feel like when they remove maybe all the asshole foods, I guess,
Yeah.
right?
Extremely powerful. I mean,
Yeah.
if you really follow that approach for 30 days, you're like levitating, by the end of the month. But again, I think it's just a matter of people do that and it's not sustainable. I mean, nobody can
Right.
live Whole30 every day. And I think that where it always fails is the exit strategy,
Yeah.
Where do you go from here?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I like the idea of balance because maybe after something like that, you would be able to be so in tune with your body where you can kind of figure out your own balance and what works for you and what doesn't and stay within that range. But going back to what you say about mindset, it's all about going into it. It's like, are you doing this so you can just white knuckle your way through it? So you can say, hey, I did it for 30 days. Or are you going into it with the mindset of, I want to learn about this. I want to know what my body's feeling, how my body's responding. So, and actually
Big
the
difference.
article brings up some of the things to focus on. Instead of focusing on a fad diet, focus on consistency, focus on those balanced meals. I like this one too. Do you do an approach where it's focusing on adding things in instead of taking away, like that crowd out method?
I love that mindset shift, in terms of focusing on everything that you can't have, focusing on all the things you can have. That's a really powerful strategy if you define yourself as a picky eater. I work with a lot of picky eaters, you might as well just call yourself a vegetable hater because that's what it means to be a picky eater. So, whenever I have a client that defines themselves as a picky eater, I say, well, let's stop focusing on the things you want to eat. Let's list out all the things you will eat and focus on that. And I think that that's really powerful. I mean, again, it all comes back to your mindset. Do you have a positive outlook? Are you looking at it in abundance? Or are you only seeing it kind of in a negative light? And it's a really powerful shift to make.
Yeah. And I think Leah and I kind of are along those lines too, because instead of focusing on, because we are more of like the paleo keto type of mindset, but with balance, but instead of focusing on, oh, I could never have bread again, or, oh, I can't eat sandwiches or Cheetos. It's like, think of all the things you can eat. You can eat all the meats, you can eat all the vegetables, and eat them like in abundance,
Yeah. And in reality, I think once you get to the point where you're like, I can eat bread, but I don't like the way I feel when I eat bread,
Yes.
I mean, that's the way I look at it. I mean, I can eat whatever I want, but here in the US, we celebrated the Super Bowl. And again, I ate like an asshole and I felt horrible, all that gluten, all that dairy, all that sugar, it reinforces the fact that, yeah, I can eat whatever I want, but then I have to be willing to live with the
yeah,
I don't want to do that again.
Yeah, I think I overindulged a little bit on Sunday too. And the next day I said, that's why I don't do that.
Yeah. These are right.
Well, you brought up bread and something, and the article says something about gluten-free diets and how they're not necessary for most. And I don't know how you feel about this. I guess most people probably don't need to be on a gluten-free diet, but I think for the purposes of like this article, I think it just kind of leaves out the reasons why people would. And it even says that it doesn't lead to something about like GI problems. And the research I've seen, that's not necessarily true. Everything I see with gluten is bad news for everyone. Just because you're not feeling it maybe doesn't mean that it's good for everyone. So do you address gluten like with your clients and in your programs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I mentioned with my own experience with inflammation, I think people have to understand that the root of all disease is inflammation. Yes. So if you can reduce inflammation in your body, you will improve all your symptoms. And my top 4 inflammatory foods are sugar, alcohol, gluten, and cow dairy. And again, I would say that I am gluten-free, dairy-free most of the time. I don't feel like that I'm in a position health-wise that I need to be gluten and dairy free 100% of the time. But I do feel like there is definitely a subset if you have any type of autoimmune condition, Hashimoto's, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, psoriasis, even like joint pain, just simple things like that, you will feel a world of difference by eliminating gluten. So I think there is a subset of people beyond just celiac. I mean, that's what people say. Well, if you're not celiac, then you can have gluten. Well, I think that's a little BS. And I think we have a lot of data to kind of prove that. So, anytime that you can reduce inflammation, and I'll tell my clients, if you're eating, sugar, alcohol, gluten, and dairy, and I'm talking about like processed sugar, like, not like fruit or something like that. But I mean, if you're eating it 100% of the time, every day, and you go just eating it maybe even 50% of the time, I promise you're going to see improvements, So again, it's like showing people that absolutely, if you went 100% free, if you did Whole 30 for 30 days, like I said, you'll be levitating, by the end of the 30 days, you'll feel so good. But you're going to feel better with any type of step in the right direction. So I think we're on the same page with that.
Okay. Yeah. And you also brought up another good point. It's like there are a certain subset of people, if you do have certain health conditions, maybe it is appropriate to do more restricted diets or do more restrictive, something that would be a fad diet or even considered completely unbalanced, because you will be eliminating things. And it's important to recognize that there's a time and a place for a restrictive therapeutic diet before your body can heal to get to a place to be more balanced. So thank you for bringing that up too.
Ding, to ding, ding, ding. Yeah, because, a lot of people are really into this IgG testing, food sensitivities and things like that. And what I think people don't realize is that's not like a life sentence. It's not like IgE testing, I mean, just because you tested positive for that type of food sensitivity does not mean that you're going to be sensitive to that food forever. It means that if you can actually heal your gut by potentially doing some sort of, very restrictive, gut healing protocol, then your gut is going to be in a better place to tolerate those foods without creating that inflammatory response.
Yeah. And have you found that by just advising clients maybe to just try cutting out those 4 things for a while, they might not be thinking anymore, oh, I have allergies? Because I've found that with clients where they're coming in saying, oh, I must be allergic to something. I have all sorts of problems. I have this, I have that. And it's like, well, let's just start with this. You don't have to jump right into spending hundreds or thousands of dollars on testing. It's like, let's just try this first. And then they're like, wow.
Yeah, I work with a lot of women who complain of like midsection bloat, kind of like menopausal weight gain, that midlife where things start to change. And I think that those types of people see a tremendous response on, looking at the food in which they're eating.
Yeah, I agree. Leo, do you have anything to add?
No, not really. I think that's been really interesting. I just love how that you're like so much aligned with our philosophies, Amanda. It's just great to hear a dietitian along those same lines. Speaking of fad diets, though, I do have the next diet, which is probably the greatest ever fad diet, which is about calories in, calories out. This article is it was kind of really interesting. It kind of goes through the history of why it's called The History of Dieting by Calorie Counting, shows why it should stay in the past. And I think we're pretty much all in agreement of this happening. Some interesting facts. The calorie began its life as a unit of stored heat, and it was used as a way of measuring. And then a chemist took interest in it, and he wanted to measure the energy of different types of foods. So he subtracted the calories in poo from the calories in food. So he got people to eat the food, and then he would check to see if things like corn were in there, and that's how he worked out what a calorie was. I thought that was just so hilarious.
That is so funny.
I love this section. It says he used these calculations to come up with a system for determining the calorie content of foods. For example, 9 calories per gram of fat and 4 calories for every gram of carbohydrates or protein, or or I thought, or we could call that a load of shit.
Yeah.
Because that's
right.
basically what he was doing.
That's right.
That's right.
So funny.
And then, so in the 20th century, weight loss started becoming a big issue. People were gaining weight after the, I think after the war maybe, and things like that was happening and things. And a lady, Dr. Lulu Hunt Peters, designed a book called best-selling diet book, Diet and Health with Key to the Calories. And she started a little page up by calorie counting using these methods. And so she became quite popular, and that's how people kind of, jumped on board and kind of heard about it. And then after World War II, weight was starting to become an issue. So the government found these calculations and brought them in. And now people are saying, like, this is flawed, it's obsolete science, it's based on something that was purely like someone eating something and seeing what's coming out in the excrement. So I thought, Amanda, it'd be good just to have a little bit of chat about calories in, calories out, and what your thoughts are around it, and some of the problematic, and if you do have any benefits of using that method.
Yeah, well, that's all very interesting. I did not know the deep history of how we came about with calorie counts, but I mean, kind of like what I was alluding at initially, it definitely, we took hold of that kind of caloric theory, calories in versus calories out, in the beginning of our nutritional guidelines, especially here in the United States. And, what I always say is that in 1977, when the first nutritional guidelines came out, we didn't know about the endocrine system. We didn't know about the impact of insulin and cortisol. We didn't know really how the body stored fat and burned fat. Like, we knew very little. So it was based on a lot of assumption, this kind of energy balance. And I mean, I think from my perspective, calories are always king. I mean, when we talk about weight loss, it's really almost impossible to, lose weight without being in some sort of a caloric deficit. However, the makeup of your calories probably matter more, in terms of, if you have someone eating 2,000 calories that's loaded with carbs and sugars, they're probably going to gain weight, based on that insulin cortisol response, how the body stores fat. But if you have someone, consuming 2,000 calories of, high protein, high fat, low carb, they're probably going to lose weight, based on that blood glucose insulin response and things like that. So, I think over the past really decade, two decades, we've really kind of have a better understanding of what a calorie really is. And so in my program, we focus more on macro management. So we focus more on the balance of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, more so than we focus on that caloric number. And I think it's interesting when you really start to teach people more, because we're, in the United States, it's calories is king. If you go through the drive-through, all you see is calories. And so I always say, you go through the fast food and you get a large sweet tea, it doesn't look so bad. It's only 150 calories. They say you get 2,000 calories a day. But when you start looking at carbs and sugars, a large sweet tea is 75 grams of carbs. It's 75 grams of sugar. That's super problematic. So it's like we need to kind of step a little bit away from focusing solely on calories. And I think we need to be teaching people more about the macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats.
Definitely. And the article is saying so much along those lines as well. It's saying that what's also important is the type of calories that you're consuming. So our body has to work for calories in unprocessed foods. Fast foods and convenience foods are far more caloric. I can't even say that word, caloric.
Calorically.
So even if we ate the same 400 calories, we would absorb far more calories than if we ate a steak or even a vegetable, they're saying in the article. So that's another reason why real foods, whole foods, is so much more important than the Mars bar, which may be the same calories as the piece of protein that you're eating.
Yes, they're in no way the same. And again, they look the same with regards to calories, but when you break down the macronutrients, they're far different.
Yeah, that's right. So, focusing on the macronutrients and getting that right balance, do you believe there's a different kind of like macronutrient balance depending for different people, depending on the amount of maybe movement they're doing or their age or anything like that? Or is the philosophy just to really just get people into eating the whole foods and staying away from the processed type foods? Like, what's the philosophy that you like to promote around that?
I mean, I think the first step is always, whole food nutrition. If you want to make it really simple, start there. But definitely, if you want to get down in the nitty gritty, looking at macronutrients is just a more way to personalize that nutritional approach. And I think that there are, kind of ranges that everyone will fall into. But absolutely, for example, as we age, we need more protein. The body doesn't utilize protein as efficiently when we're 50, 60, 70 years old as it does when we're 20 years old, So 20-year-old eats 100 grams of protein and they utilize 100 grams of protein. When you're 60, 70, you eat 100 grams of protein and you may only utilize 75 grams, but you still need 100 grams. So you really have to eat 125 grams or 150 grams to get what you need. So, that's just one scenario where, macronutrients would be a little bit different. Same thing with like exercise. I mean, if you're someone who is, very physically active, taking lots of steps in the gym, you may benefit from more carbohydrates in combination with your proteins. Whereas if you're someone a little bit more sedentary, then you may benefit from less carbohydrates, So again, I think that there's definitely just generic ranges that everyone could find themselves in. And then you could kind of dial it in based on, your health goals, your activity level, your age, and those things to kind of give you those really specific results.
Yeah, that's so true. And you look at you incorporate some movement into your program as well, is that right? So you're looking at food is a great starting point. We speak a lot about food, but there's other factors that come into play as well.
Oh, absolutely. I will say diet is 80%, because I do feel like people use their despise of exercise, their lack of time to exercise, their inability to exercise as an excuse not to start. Well, if I can't exercise, I'm not going to see results. No, you can find optimal health with just walking, every day. So it doesn't require a ton of exercise. But I think that there are so many factors that influence health and wellness that we are not considering. I think food and exercise are the most blatant ones, but I'm super passionate about sleep. Alcohol consumption. I mean, right now, especially in the US, I feel like people are sleeping worse than they ever have due to, phones and distractions and stress and, even health conditions. And I feel like we're drinking more alcohol than we've ever had before due to phones and stress and all the things. So, things like poor sleep, alcohol consumption, activity level, stress, pooping every day. That's something that people don't talk about. That's super important for your overall health and wellness and weight loss. They can all impact your, final results.
Yeah, definitely. Holly, did you have any thoughts here?
No, I just had a question, but we've moved on from there. So if now is no longer relevant. So.
Okay. Sorry about that, Holly. Well,
no, it's okay. I didn't want to jump in because you guys were in a good flow.
Yeah. Well, I think we've had such a great conversation today. We've covered a lot of topics in there. We've learned a bit about the history of calories. And I love the line at the end of the article where the person I think he might be a doctor, is critiquing. He says, "I hate when things are wrong. We should try and fix it because they are wrong." So
brilliant.
That is really the hard part, I think, in nutrition right now, is that it is so hard to admit we were wrong, you know? Even when you look at the nutritional guidelines, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that in, I think it was in the mid 90s that our government came back and said, okay, cholesterol in food doesn't impact your, cholesterol in your blood. And also we don't recommend a low fat diet anymore. Like that did not make headlines. People don't realize that actually happened. because we're just so afraid to admit that we were wrong, you know?
Is it so much that, like, I always thought that what's holding people back from saying, oh, we are wrong, is I feel like that opens a lot of doors for liability for people that had all these health problems, and like their doctor told them to eat in one way, and then now it's saying, oh, well, that was wrong. Then it's like, you told me to do this. And so I kind of feel like with these policies and these guidelines that we've had, we've kind of backed ourselves into a corner too, because it's like, even though things have changed, we'll be like, oh yeah, by the way, we were wrong, but then kind of brush it under the rug because there's going to be some backlash. Already people like get pushback for just saying this, by people saying, you're wrong, you're spreading misinformation, you're going to kill people, you're irresponsible, you shouldn't be online. Like, so I mean, I think we've created this problem, and now we're kind of stuck in it too.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it comes down to, is that, you know, again, I feel like we were just so hard on our guidelines, you know, they were very black and white. And I think what we all know right now is that nutrition, health, and wellness, it is not black and white. You know, what works for one person does not necessarily work for another. And, you know, finding what fits you the best is ultimately the whole journey in terms of, you know, finding that long-term health and wellness. So, but yeah, it's really hard to kind of go against the grain for sure.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you and you getting the message out and correcting the narrative and like really helping people see through the muddied waters when it comes to nutrition and health. So thank you. I think this has been a wonderful conversation. We're so glad we were able to get you on. We will link up all your social stuff, but go ahead and tell our listeners one last time what your Instagram is and where they can find you online.
You can find me at Amanda Nighbert RD and amandanighbert.com.
All right, sounds good. Well, that is the end of today's episode. Our theme music is created by Andrew Bowden, and production services are by Kevin Kennedy Steen of Disc of Light Media. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week.